The Morning Fog, un sick over Salem, Massachusetts on October 15, 1910, when young altar boy Timothy Asford discovered what would become one of the most puzzling criminal cases in the town's history. Timothy had arrived early at St. Mary's Episcopal Chapel to prepare for morning service, as was his routine every Tuesday and Friday. The chapel, built in 1847, stood at the corner of Chestnut and Federal Streets, its Gothic Revival architecture casting long shadows in the dim morning light. Timothy entered through the side doors in the key entrusted to him by Father Benedict Morrison. The chapel interior was darker than usual, with only 3 flickering candles providing illumination near the altar. As Timothy approached to light the remaining candles for the morning service, he discovered the body of Sister Cordelia Blackwood lying motionless on the cold stone floor before the altar. Sister Cordelia, at 34, had served the St. Mary's congregation for 8 years. She was known for her dedication to charitable works and her strict adherence to religious protocols. Her body lay positioned with arms crossed over her chest, wearing her traditional black habit. Most peculiar was the arrangement around her. 3 tall wick candles formed a triangle around her body, each burning steadily despite the chapel's drafty conditions. Timothy immediately ran to fetch Sheriff Thaddeus Grimsby, who lived 2 blocks away on Essex Street. Sheriff Grimsby, a veteran lawman with 22 years of experience, arrived at the chapel within minutes of Timothy's frantic report. Grimsby ordered the altar boy to remain outside while he conducted his initial examination of the scene. The sheriff noted several unusual aspects of the discovery. The 3 candles appeared to be of identical size and composition, suggesting they had been lit simultaneously. Each candle had burned down approximately 2 inches, indicating they had been burning for roughly 4 to 5 hours based on Grimsby's experience with similar church candles. This timing would place their lighting sometime between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning. Sister Cordelia showed no obvious signs of violence on initial visual inspection. Her habit was properly arranged, and her face appeared peaceful, almost serene. However, Grimsby noticed slight discoloration around her lips and a faint, unusual odor that he could not immediately identify. The chapel's communion wine, typically stored in the vestry, was missing from its usual location. Father Morrison arrived at the chapel approximately 30 minutes after Sheriff Grimsby began his examination. The elderly priest, visibly shaken by the news, confirmed that Sister Cordelia had been present for evening prayers the previous night, which concluded at approximately 9 o'clock. He stated that she typically remained for an additional hour of private prayer before retiring to the convent adjacent to the chapel. The sheriff's preliminary investigation revealed that the chapel's main doors remained locked from the inside, secured with the heavy iron bar that Father Morrison placed across them each evening. The side door, through which Timothy had entered, showed no signs of forced entry. Only 3 individuals possessed keys to this entrance: Father Morrison, Sister Cordelia, and Timothy himself. Grimsby documented the position of various items within the chapel. The collection box near the entrance remained undisturbed, containing the previous Sunday's offerings totaling $43.67. Religious artifacts, including a silver chalice and ornate crucifix, remained in their designated positions, ruling out robbery as a motive. The arrangement of the 3 candles particularly intrigued the sheriff. Each candle was positioned exactly 3 feet from Sister Cordelia's body, forming a perfect equilateral triangle. The precision of this arrangement suggested deliberate placement rather than random positioning. The candles themselves were of a type not typically used in St. Mary's regular services, being slightly larger and composed of a different wax blend than those stored in the chapel's supply closet. Sheriff Grimsby interviewed Timothy Asford thoroughly regarding his discovery. The boy, aged 16, had served as altar boy for 3 years and was considered reliable by both Father Morrison and the congregation. Timothy confirmed that he had arrived at his usual time of 6:30 in the morning and had followed his standard routine upon entering the chapel. The sheriff also questioned Father Morrison about Sister Cordelia's recent behavior and activities. The priest reported that she had seemed troubled during the past week, though she had not confided the specific nature of her concerns. Sister Cordelia had mentioned receiving correspondence that had upset her, but Father Morrison had respected her privacy and not pressed for details. By noon on October 15, Sheriff Grimsby had secured the chapel as a crime scene and sent word to the county medical examiner, Dr. Nathaniel Crowley. The sheriff recognized that this case would require expertise beyond his department's capabilities, particularly given the unusual circumstances surrounding Sister Cordelia's death and the mysterious arrangement of the 3 candles. Detective Inspector Ezekiel Hawthorne arrived in Salem on the afternoon train from Boston, summoned by Sheriff Grimsby's telegram requesting assistance with what the sheriff described as a most peculiar death under suspicious circumstances. Inspector Hawthorne, aged 41, had earned recognition throughout Massachusetts for his methodical approach to criminal investigations and his ability to solve cases that initially appeared unsolvable. Inspector Hawthorne's first action was to conduct a thorough examination of the crime scene, despite the passage of several hours since the discovery. He observed that the 3 candles had continued burning until approximately 11 o'clock in the morning, when Father Morrison had finally extinguished them at Sheriff Grimsby's instruction. Hawthorne calculated that the candles had burned for approximately 10 to 11 hours total, confirming the timeline that placed their lighting in the early morning hours of October 15. The inspector examined the candles themselves with particular interest. Using a magnifying lens, he observed that the wax showed consistent burning patterns, indicating they had been lit simultaneously and had burned under stable conditions without significant air disturbance. The candle holders, which were not part of the chapel's usual inventory, appeared to be made of brass and showed signs of recent polishing. Dr. Crowley's preliminary examination of Sister Cordelia's body revealed no obvious trauma or injury. However, he noted the discoloration around her lips that Sheriff Grimsby had observed, along with a slight blue tinge to her fingernails. These symptoms suggested possible poisoning, though Dr. Crowley required a complete autopsy to determine the exact cause of death. Inspector Hawthorne interviewed the members of St. Mary's congregation who had been present for evening prayers on October 14. Among those questioned was Mrs. Prudence Whitmore, wife of prominent merchant Josiah Whitmore. Mrs. Whitmore reported that Sister Cordelia had appeared agitated during prayers and had left the chapel immediately upon the service's conclusion, rather than remaining for her customary period of private devotion. Deacon Marcus Aldridge, aged 57, who assisted Father Morrison with various chapel duties, provided additional information about Sister Cordelia's recent activities. Aldridge stated that Sister Cordelia had received a letter delivered by private messenger on October 12, 3 days before her death. The letter had visibly upset her, and she had requested permission to speak privately with Father Morrison immediately after receiving it. Father Morrison, when pressed by Inspector Hawthorne, revealed that Sister Cordelia had confessed to receiving what she described as correspondence of a threatening nature. However, she had declined to show him the letter or provide specific details about its contents, stating only that it concerned matters of conscience that must be resolved through prayer and contemplation. The inspector's search of Sister Cordelia's quarters in the convent revealed several items of interest. Her personal Bible contained numerous bookmarks and annotations, particularly in passages relating to confession, forgiveness, and moral judgment. A small wooden box beneath her bed contained personal correspondence, including letters from her sister in Philadelphia and various religious publications. Most significantly, Inspector Hawthorne discovered a partially burned letter in the fireplace of Sister Cordelia's room. The remaining fragments contained only a few legible words, consequences, silence, and what appeared to be part of a signature beginning with the letter J. The paper quality and ink suggested the letter had been written recently and on expensive stationery. The investigation revealed that Sister Cordelia maintained detailed records of the chapel's charitable activities and financial transactions. Her ledger book showed meticulous accounting for donations, expenditures for food and clothing distributed to the poor, and various other congregational expenses. Inspector Hawthorne noted that the most recent entries, dated October 13, showed unusual attention to specific donation amounts and their sources. Interview with congregation member Mrs. Eleanor Fitzgerald revealed that Sister Cordelia had seemed particularly concerned about certain members of the congregation during recent weeks. Mrs. Fitzgerald stated that Sister Cordelia had made several cryptic comments about wolves in sheep's clothing and the necessity of protecting the flock from those who would exploit their fight. Inspector Hawthorne examined the chapel's visitor records and discovered that Sister Cordelia had met privately with an unidentified individual on the evening of October 13. The entry in Father Morrison's appointment book, written in Sister Cordelia's handwriting, simply noted private consultation without identifying the visitor or the purpose of the meeting. The inspector's examination of the communion wine storage area revealed that 2 bottles were missing, not just the one initially noted by Sheriff Grimsby. The missing wine was from a special reserve typically used only during major religious celebrations, suggesting that whoever had taken it possessed detailed knowledge of the chapel's inventory and storage practices. Dr. Crowley's autopsy results, delivered on October 17, confirmed that Sister Cordelia had died from poisoning. The specific toxin was identified as oleander extract, a substance that could be obtained from the common ornamental shrubs that grew throughout Salem's residential areas. The concentration found in her system indicated that the poison had been administered approximately 2 to 3 hours before her death. The timing of the poisoning aligned with Inspector Hawthorne's theory that Sister Cordelia had consumed the tainted substance during her private meeting on the evening of October 13, rather than on the morning her body was discovered. This revelation significantly altered the investigation's focus and timeline. Inspector Hawthorne concluded Chapter 2 of his investigation with several key findings. Sister Cordelia had been murdered through deliberate poisoning. The crime had been committed by someone with intimate knowledge of her routines and the chapel's operations, and the arrangement of the 3 candles served a specific purpose related to the killer's motivation. Inspector Hawthorne's investigation into Sister Cordelia Blackwood's background revealed a complex history that extended far beyond her 8 years of service at St. Mary's Chapel. Born Cordelia Adelaide Pemberton in Hartford, Connecticut, she had entered religious life following a personal tragedy that few congregation members knew about. Her younger brother, Charles Pemberton, had died under suspicious circumstances in 1905, and Cordelia had dedicated herself to religious service as a form of penance for what she considered her failure to protect him. The inspector discovered that Sister Cordelia had maintained extensive correspondence with various religious institutions throughout New England, often sharing information about suspicious activities or individuals who moved between congregations. Her letters, found in the convent's files, revealed a network of religious contacts who relied on her observations to identify potential threats to their communities. Examination of St. Mary's financial records showed that Sister Cordelia had uncovered significant discrepancies in the congregation's donations and expenditures during the months preceding her death. Her private notice, written in a simple code that Inspector Hawthorne deciphered, indicated that someone had been systematically embezzling funds intended for charitable purposes. The amounts involved totaled nearly $800 over a 6-month period, a substantial sum for the modest congregation. The investigation revealed that Josiah Whitmore, prominent Salem merchant and chairman of the chapel's board of trustees, had been experiencing severe financial difficulties despite his outward appearance of prosperity. His import business had suffered significant losses due to recent changes in tariff regulations, and he had borrowed heavily against his property to maintain operations. Several creditors had threatened legal action if their debts were not satisfied by the end of October 1910. Inspector Hawthorne interviewed Whitmore's business associates and discovered that the merchant had been desperately seeking sources of capital to avoid bankruptcy. Whitmore had approached several banks for loans but had been refused due to his deteriorating financial position. The inspector learned that Whitmore had access to St. Mary's financial records through his position as chairman of the board of trustees. Sister Cordelia's coded notes revealed that she had discovered Whitmore's embezzlement scheme on October 10, 1910. Her records showed that donations collected during Sunday services were being partially diverted before reaching the chapel's official accounts. Whitmore had been recording smaller amounts than actually collected and pocketing the difference, using his position to manipulate the financial documentation. The inspector's examination of Whitmore's personal correspondence revealed increasing desperation regarding his financial situation. Letters from creditors became increasingly threatening throughout September and early October 1910. One letter, dated October 8, demanded immediate payment of $1,200 or threatened seizure of Whitmore's primary business assets. Investigation of the threatening letter received by Sister Cordelia on October 12 led Inspector Hawthorne to a stationery shop on Federal Street. The proprietor, Mr. Benjamin Harwell, remembered selling expensive letterhead to Josiah Whitmore on October 11. Harwell described Whitmore as agitated and insisted on purchasing the finest quality paper available, paying in cash rather than his usual practice of charging purchases to his business account. Inspector Hawthorne's investigation revealed that Whitmore possessed knowledge of plant toxicity through his import business, which occasionally dealt with botanical products. His business records showed previous transactions involving medicinal herbs and plant-based compounds, demonstrating familiarity with such substances. The inspector learned that Whitmore had arranged a private meeting with Sister Cordelia on October 13 under the pretense of discussing expanded charitable programs for the upcoming winter months. Father Morrison confirmed that such meetings were not unusual, as Whitmore frequently consulted with Sister Cordelia about the allocation of charitable funds due to her direct involvement with the community's needy families. Examination of Whitmore's movements on October 13 revealed several suspicious elements. His wife reported that he had left her home at approximately 7 o'clock that evening, stating he had business matters to attend to. He had not returned until nearly midnight, claiming he had been meeting with potential investors for his business. However, Inspector Hawthorne's inquiries revealed no evidence of such meetings. The investigation uncovered that Whitmore had purchased candles and holders from a Boston supplier during a routine business trip on October 9. The supplier remembered the transaction due to Whitmore's specific requirements regarding burning time. Inspector Hawthorne theorized that Whitmore had arranged the 3 candles as a deliberate symbol related to his crime. The number 3 held significance in Christian symbolism, potentially representing the Trinity, but in this context, the inspector believed it represented Whitmore's attempt to make the murder appear ritualistic or religiously motivated, thereby deflecting suspicion from financial motives. The inspector's investigation revealed that Whitmore had knowledge of Sister Cordelia's evening routines and her practice of consuming a small amount of communion wine as part of her private prayers. This knowledge would have allowed him to poison the wine with oleander extract, knowing that she would consume it during their private meeting on October 13. Further investigation showed that Whitmore had been systematically destroying financial documents that would have revealed his embezzlement scheme. Sister Cordelia's discovery of his activities threatened not only his position within the congregation but also potential criminal prosecution that would have resulted in imprisonment and complete financial ruin. Inspector Hawthorne concluded that Whitmore's motive was preservation of his social standing and freedom, combined with desperate need to continue his embezzlement scheme to avoid immediate bankruptcy. Sister Cordelia's knowledge of his crimes represented an existential threat to everything Whitmore valued about his position in Salem society. Inspector Hawthorne's methodical examination of physical evidence began to construct a comprehensive timeline of the crime. The poisoned communion wine had been carefully analyzed by Dr. Crowley, who determined that the oleander extract had been dissolved in alcohol several hours before consumption, allowing the toxic compounds to fully integrate with the wine. This preparation method required advanced planning and knowledge of Sister Cordelia's habits. The inspector's search of Whitmore's property revealed a small container with plant residue in his workshop. Analysis confirmed the presence of oleander compounds. Whitmore's personal library contained botanical reference materials, including texts on plant properties that showed recent use. Inspector Hawthorne interviewed local merchants who confirmed that Whitmore had made inquiries about plant-based preparations, claiming interest in natural remedies. His questions had focused specifically on extraction methods and concentrations. Inspector Hawthorne's examination of physical evidence included analysis of materials found at the scene. The 3 candles were traced to their source through manufacturer markings, while the arrangement suggested deliberate placement. The inspector's examination revealed traces of candle wax on clothing found in Whitmore's wardrobe. The wax composition matched the candles used at the crime scene. When questioned about this evidence, Whitmore could not provide a satisfactory explanation for how the wax had come to be on his clothing. Dr. Crowley's detailed autopsy report provided additional evidence regarding the timing and method of poisoning. Sister Cordelia had consumed the tainted wine approximately 2.5 hours before her death, placing the consumption at roughly 9:30 on the evening of October 13. This timeline aligned precisely with Whitmore's claimed meeting time and his known movements that evening. The inspector discovered that Whitmore had visited St. Mary's Chapel on 2 previous occasions during late evening hours, ostensibly to review financial records. Father Morrison confirmed these visits but noted that they had occurred without prior arrangement, which was unusual for Whitmore's typically formal approach to chapel business. These reconnaissance visits had allowed Whitmore to observe Sister Cordelia's evening routines and plan his approach. Analysis of the partially burned letter found in Sister Cordelia's quarters revealed text fragments that matched Whitmore's handwriting style. The paper quality and ink were consistent with materials found in Whitmore's office. Inspector Hawthorne's investigation revealed that Whitmore had prepared an alibi for the evening of October 13 by arranging to meet with Thomas Brennan, a potential business investor, at a tavern on Derby Street. However, Brennan's statement revealed that Whitmore had cancelled this meeting at the last minute, claiming urgent family matters required his attention. This cancellation had occurred shortly before Whitmore's meeting with Sister Cordelia. The inspector discovered evidence that Whitmore had attempted to establish alternative explanations for Sister Cordelia's death. On October 14, the day before her body was discovered, Whitmore had mentioned to several congregation members that Sister Cordelia had seemed troubled by spiritual matters and had expressed concerns about evil influences affecting the chapel. These statements appear designed to support theories of supernatural or ritualistic causes for her death. Examination of St. Mary's donation records revealed the sophisticated nature of Whitmore's embezzlement scheme. He had been altering collection tallies by small amounts that would be difficult to detect without careful analysis. Sister Cordelia's discovery of this scheme had been facilitated by her meticulous record-keeping and her practice of personally counting donations before they were submitted to Whitmore for official recording. The inspector found evidence that Whitmore had been monitoring Sister Cordelia's activities in the days preceding her death. Several congregation members reported seeing him near the chapel at unusual hours, and the convent's gardener had noticed Whitmore walking past the building on multiple evenings when he claimed to be attending business meetings elsewhere in town. Physical evidence from the crime scene was examined for connections to potential suspects. The positioning of Sister Cordelia's body and the precise arrangement of the candles suggested someone familiar with the chapel's layout and her personal routines. Inspector Hawthorne's reconstruction of the crime indicated that Whitmore had administered the poisoned wine to Sister Cordelia during their meeting, then accompanied her to the chapel to evaluate the poison's effects. The arrangement of the 3 candles and the positioning of her body had been completed after her death, as part of Whitmore's attempt to create the appearance of ritualistic murder rather than a crime motivated by financial desperation. On October 22, 1910, Inspector Hawthorne presented his findings to Sheriff Grimsby and obtained a warrant for Josiah Whitmore's arrest. The arrest took place at Whitmore's import business on Federal Street, where he was conducting what appeared to be normal business operations. Whitmore's initial reaction was one of apparent surprise and indignation, but Inspector Hawthorne noted subtle signs of relief, as if the merchant had been anticipating this moment. During his initial interrogation, Whitmore maintained his innocence and provided detailed accounts of his whereabouts during the relevant time periods. However, when confronted with the physical evidence, particularly the fingerprints on the brass candle holders and the traces of oleander extract in his garden shed, his composure began to deteriorate. Whitmore's legal counsel, Attorney Samuel Morrison, no relation to Father Morrison, advised his client to remain silent, but the accumulated evidence made denial increasingly difficult. The breakthrough in obtaining Whitmore's confession came when Inspector Hawthorne presented him with the reconstructed fragments of the threatening letter. The handwriting analysis and the recovery of additional text through chemical treatment provided irrefutable proof of Whitmore's authorship. When confronted with this evidence, Whitmore initially claimed the letter had been written in anger but denied any connection to Sister Cordelia's death. However, as Inspector Hawthorne systematically presented each piece of evidence, the purchase records for the candles and holders, the testimony from the apothecary, the soil traces, and the timeline of events, Whitmore's resistance gradually crumbled. On October 24, after 2 days of interrogation, he provided a complete confession to the murder of Sister Cordelia Blackwood. Whitmore's confession revealed the calculated nature of his crime. He admitted to embezzling funds from St. Mary's Chapel over a period of 8 months, initially taking small amounts to cover temporary business losses. As his financial situation deteriorated, the amounts increased, eventually totaling nearly $1,000. Sister Cordelia's meticulous record-keeping had made the discovery of his scheme inevitable. According to his confession, Whitmore had initially hoped to repay the stolen funds before a detection, but his business losses continued to mount. When Sister Cordelia approached him on October 10 with evidence of the discrepancies, he realized that exposure would result in criminal prosecution, imprisonment, and complete social disgrace. The desperation of his financial situation, combined with the threat to his reputation, had driven him to consider murder as his only option. Whitmore detailed how he had researched various methods of poisoning, eventually settling on oleander extract due to its availability in his own garden and its relatively undetectable nature when dissolved in alcohol. He had practiced the extraction process several times to ensure it could produce a lethal concentration. The threatening letter had been his attempt to convince Sister Cordelia to remain silent about her discoveries. The confession revealed that Whitmore had arranged the meeting on October 13 under the pretense of negotiating a repayment plan for the stolen funds. He had convinced Sister Cordelia to meet at his residence first, where he had offered her poisoned wine while discussing potential solutions. After she consumed the wine, they had proceeded to the chapel for what they claimed would be private prayer seeking divine guidance for their situation. Whitmore admitted to arranging the 3 candles around Sister Cordelia's body after her death, positioning her in a peaceful pose to suggest natural death during prayer. The candles were intended to create the impression of ritualistic or supernatural circumstances, deflecting investigation away from financial motives. He had hoped the unusual arrangement would lead investigators to focus on religious or occult explanations rather than examining the chapel's financial records. The trial of Josiah Whitmore began on January 15, 1911, in Essex County Superior Court. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Harrison Blackwood, presented the extensive physical evidence gathered by Inspector Hawthorne. The case attracted significant attention throughout New England due to the unusual circumstances of the crime and the prominent position of the accused within Salem society. Whitmore's defense team attempted to argue that Sister Cordelia had committed suicide due to spiritual distress, and that Whitmore had merely discovered her body and arranged the candles in a misguided attempt to protect her reputation. However, the evidence of premeditation, including the purchase of specialized candles and the preparation of oleander extract, made this defense untenable. The trial lasted 6 days, with testimony from numerous witnesses including Inspector Hawthorne, Dr. Crowley, and various members of St. Mary's congregation. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning a verdict of guilty of murder in the first degree. Judge Theodore Whitman sentenced Josiah Whitmore to death by electric chair, with execution scheduled for April 15, 1911. Whitmore's execution was carried out as scheduled at Massachusetts State Prison. His final statement expressed remorse for his actions but attempted to justify the murder as necessary to protect his family from the disgrace of his financial failures. He requested that his property be sold to compensate St. Mary's Chapel for the funds he had stolen, though the total value of his assets proved insufficient to cover the full amount. The case had lasting effects on St. Mary's congregation and the Salem community. Father Morrison implemented new financial oversight procedures to prevent future embezzlement, including requiring multiple signatures for all financial transactions and regular independent audits of chapel funds. Sister Cordelia was remembered through the establishment of a charitable foundation in her name, funded by donations from throughout New England. Inspector Hawthorne's methodical investigation techniques and his use of emerging forensic methods, including fingerprint analysis and chemical testing, were recognized as exemplary by law enforcement agencies throughout Massachusetts. The case contributed to the acceptance of scientific evidence in criminal prosecutions and influenced investigative procedures for decades to come. The resolution of the case demonstrated that even seemingly inexplicable crimes could be solved through systematic investigation and careful analysis of physical evidence. The apparent ritualistic elements that initially puzzled investigators proved to be deliberate misdirection by a desperate criminal attempting to conceal a mundane motive of greed and self-preservation.